I'm joined today by author Michael Hingson on Primetime Local News. Michael, you have a new book out, and that's what we're going to be chatting today. But first of all, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Well, we're going to talk about the book called Live Like a Guide Dog, which is your newest book that's coming out. And Michael, tell me a little bit about your backstory and the premise for you writing this book.
In 2011, I and a woman named Susie Flory wrote a book called Thunder Dog, the story of a blind man, his guide dog, and the triumph of trust that became a #1 New York Times bestseller. 2 years later, we wrote Running with Roselle. Um, Another friend of Susie's helped me do that. It was more of a children's book. So Running with Roselle was written by me and Jeanette Hampscom. And both books are still completely available wherever books are sold. Running with Roselle primarily through Amazon. It was self-published. And I continued to travel and speak until the pandemic hit in 2020. And when it did, I started to think aloud about what had happened. And I realized that I did what I did on September 11th because a mindset had kicked in. And I had talked a lot about escaping and not really being overly frightened, but I never thought about teaching other people that they could learn those skills as well. And so we decided to write a new book. And I did that with, again, another friend of Susie's, Carrie Wyatt Kent. The two of us work together. It's absolutely a collaborative effort in every way, in every sense of the word. But we wrote a book literally intended to teach people how they can learn to control fear. Rather than letting fear blind you, as I put it, or overwhelm you or whatever, and paralyzing you so you can't make decisions, there are things that you can do so that even in the most tense, fearful situations possible, you can teach your mind to control those fears and to be able to actually use fear as a way of focusing rather than being overwhelmed and being not able to be decisive. And so we wrote the book, and it's entitled Live Like a Guide Dog: True Stories from a Blind Man, His Guide. I'm sorry, True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. The idea behind it is that I learned most of what I know about teamwork and trust and leadership from working with 8 guide dogs, because guide dogs and their handlers, if it works right, work as a team. The dog doesn't lead the blind person around. In fact, I tell reporters all the time, don't you ever dare say that a guide dog led a blind person out of the building, because it's not true. The dog's job is to make sure that we walk safe. It's my job to know where to go and how to get there. And I have techniques to do that the same way you do as a light dependent or sighted person. And the reality is that um, I, of course, incorporated all that, but I had realized that we didn't teach people how to deal with fear. So we wrote Live Like a Guide Dog to use the lessons I learned from guide dogs and my wife's service dog, Fantasia, about how to control fear and behave in a way that allows you to be less fearful in your life. And that's the story.
So, within this book, then, Michael, is it a series of stories from people that are collected, or is it more just totally based on your experience?
It's based on my experience total. We do use some examples of other people in the book, but it is based primarily on my experience. So every chapter is about a different dog. We start with my first guide dog, Squire, and we go up through Alamo, who is my current guide dog. He's my 8th dog, and a couple of other things in between. But it is all about lessons that I learned, and we use other information to back up that data so that people understand that this is a real thing. But the reality is the mind is a muscle. You can learn to listen to the inner voice inside of you. That's your mind telling you things. How often do we think we have an answer when something happens and then we go, no, that can't be the right answer. It happened too quickly. And it turns out, even though we guessed something else or we did something else, it was the right answer.
This is fascinating. The story, your backstory is incredible, and just the way that you've turned your experience, into helping others is incredible. And I appreciate speaking with you today. And just before we go, Michael, where can people find your books?
Sure. So Live Like a Guide Dog is actually being released on the 20th of August, but it's available for pre-order right now from Amazon and other book places. Or you can go to michaelhingson.com, MichaelHingson.com, and there are links there. We have a page. It's actually michaelhingson.com/live read-like-a-guide-dog that will take you to pages where you can read about the book and order it. But it is available wherever Amazon and other are selling books and other places are selling books. And I do ask that if anybody orders it, pre-orders it, and they get it, I hope that they will not only read it but review it. We would really appreciate that.
All right. Well, Michael, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much. And we look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Thank you. Would love to do it.